A good Tavach, and welcome to the Shiurim Project. Look at the Sichos. Today we're going to learn Chelek Tes Vav, Sicha Beis of Parshas Noach. Now, before we start, just want to give a brief introduction to the Sicha. This Sicha is a famous Sicha where the Rebbe discusses the way the development of Chassidus serves as the preparation for the coming of Mashiach. And the Rebbe also mentions that the Rebbe explains in this Sikha also how the development of modern technology and sciences also serve as the hachana for the coming of Mashiach. Now, in this Sikha, the Rebbe also dedicates one seif to discussing the dangers of going to study in college and university campuses in America or elsewhere. I'm going to do the order a little bit different than the way it's in the Sikha. First, I'm going to explain the general Sikha, what the Rebbe says. And then at the end, I'll get back to the piece about college, again, which is out of order of the way it is in the Sikha, just for concentration and for the flow, especially if you don't have the Sikha open in front of you. It's easier to just keep track of the Rebbe's flow. So, the Sikha revolves around the pasuk that says that during the 600th year of Noach's life, the heavens opened up and the earth opened up, Aruba Yis HaShamayim, the windows of the heaven, and the deep Tehoim of the earth opened up, and the water filled the earth. This is a description of the flood waters coming both from above and from below. So the Zohar quotes this pasuk, and the Zohar says, in the 6th century, again this was the 600th year of Noach's life, so the Zohar says in the 6th century of the 6th millennium, which would be the year 5500 to the year 5600, which would be in Hebrew lettering, that would be from the year Taf Kuf through the year Taf Reish. So the Zohar says that there's going to be a opening of both the windows above and the windows below, and this is a reference of Chachma. He says the Zohar says the words, the gates of Chachma will open up, and it's going to prepare the world to ascend during the 7th millennium. Obviously, this is a reference to what the Gemara says, that the world was created for 6 millennium, and the 7th is going to be when Mashiach comes. So what's going to happen during the 6th century of the 6th millennium is going to be a preparation for the time of Mashiach. What does it mean when the Zohar says that there's going to be an opening of wisdom of above and wisdom of below? So one of the commentaries of the Zohar that the Rebbe quotes explains that there's a reference to 2 types of Chachma. There's Chachma Torah, wisdom of the Torah, and there's Chachma Yisroel, wisdom of the world, otherwise known as the sciences. So the Zohar is telling us over here that both of these Chachmas are going to be opened, developed, and the well springs are going to pour forth. And this is going to serve as the preparation for Mashiach. On the Chassidus front, what does this mean? On the Chassidus front, on the Chachmas HaTorah side, this is a reference to the revelation of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was revealed only 6 years before the year Kuf. The Baal Shem Tov was revealed in the year Taf Tzadik Daled, and just at the end of that millennium, in the year Taf Kuf Tzadik Zayin, the Torah was printed, and then look, the Torah was printed a few years later in Taf Reish Ches. So the main revelation of Chassidus took place during that millennium from Taf Kuf through Taf Reish. The same thing is true when it comes to development of modern sciences and technology, etc. So during that millennium, there were many developments that took place as well. So in other words, this is the Rebbe is basically saying that the description of the Zohar is a prophecy that we've seen come true in our lifetime. The question is, though, what's the connection between these 2 types of Chachmas, the Chachma of the Torah and the Chachma Ha'olam? Chachma of the Torah, we understand that learning Chassidus is a preparation for the time of Mashiach. Right? The Rambam describes at the time of Mashiach, he tells us it's going to be a time, Mola Ha'aretz De'as Hashem Kamayim Liyam Mechasim, as the pasuk says. It's going to be a time when Hashem's wisdom is going to cover the entire world, is going to fill the world like the sea covers, like the water covers the sea. So to have a revelation of Chassidus during this time makes sense that it's going to be a preparation for the time of Mashiach. But how does the development of Chachma Ha'olam, of modern technology and sciences, how does that serve as a preparation for the revelation of Mashiach? Now, when the Zohar really doesn't just say that these 2 things are going to serve as a preparation. The Zohar puts them together. The Zohar says that these 2 Chachmas are both going to serve as the preparation. The Zohar seems to connect these 2 things together. And the question is, how could you even put them both in the same sentence? Chachmas HaTorah is infinitely greater than the Chachmas Ha'olam. So it makes sense that Chachmas HaTorah is going to be there, even if we have an explanation for Chachmas HaOlam. Why does the Zohar put them together as though these two things are one, and both of their developments are equally important in one sense for the coming of Mashiach? So in order to answer this, the Rebbe is going to give three different explanations. The Rebbe is going to go up three different levels in explaining what the connection between these two Chachmas are and how they both serve as the Hachana for the coming of Mashiach. But before we get there, the Rebbe gives an introduction to the whole explanation, and that is that in essence, when we look at the world around us, the entire world, and everything in the world, including all the Chachma in the world and everything, in essence exists for one purpose. And that is, if we go back to Parshas Bereshis, the Torah tells us Bereshis bara Elikim, and the Medrash tells us Bereshis means Beis Reshis. Hashem created the world for two things, for Torah and for Yisroel. Everything that Hashem created in this world, Lo bra'oi el l'chvodoi. Hashem created everything in this world in order for Hashem's kavod, Hashem's glory, to be revealed. So we understand this. So we understand from this that every single thing that a Yid has in this world that Hashem created is here for one purpose. Its purpose is, the purpose of the creation is, in order for us to be able to have a lesson or use it out somehow in our avodas Hashem. The same thing is true when it comes to Chachmas HaOlam, that the purpose of why they were created is in order to be able to serve Hashem in one way or another, as the Alter Rebbe tells us in Tanya. Now, realistically, not every Yid is on that level where a person is able to study Chachmas HaOlam, and the Chachmas HaOlam immediately serve as the method for him to serve Hashem. And that's why in Tanya, when the Alter Rebbe speaks about this, he gives an example of those who were able to use it out in the right way. He says, the Rambam, the Ramban, in other words, men of great stature. Not everybody is necessarily in the same state, in the same place as them. And therefore, if somebody else who's not on their level studies Chachmas HaOlam, the opposite, the Alter Rebbe uses very harsh language. He says that the Chachmas HaOlam are metame Chabad of the Nefesh Elikis. It's metame, it defiles the Chachma Bina Das of a person's Nefesh Elikis. But nevertheless, the ultimate purpose and the goal of creation of these things nevertheless remains, of Chachmas HaOlam. The goal and the purpose of why Hashem created them is in order for the Yid to be able to use them out in some sense for his avodas Hashem. Now, the Zohar, now let's get back, based on this, let's get back to the Zohar. So when the Zohar tells us that the development of Chachmas HaOlam is going to be a preparation for the ascent, La'Allah b'Shi'ah, the ascent which will happen in the 7th millennium, it's obvious that the Zohar is not just telling us in general, like the Rambam and Ramban, that we're able to take Torah and use it out for something which is, we're able to take Chachmas HaOlam and use it out for something which is a method in avodas Hashem. The Zohar is saying much more than that. The Zohar is saying that the area where these things are going to be helpful are specifically in those things that are related to the coming of Mashiach. What does that mean? So one of the main things that the world is going to change, in a sense, with the coming of Mashiach is the pasuk that we say every time we take out the Sefer Torah on Shabbos. We say, "V'nigla kvod Hashem, v'ro kol basar yachtav kifi Hashem diber." That Hashem's glory will be revealed, and all flesh will see together that the word of Hashem, that the mouth of Hashem has spoken. Which means that when Mashiach comes, every single Yid is going to see, every single person is going to see the reality of Hashem present in this world. The wisdom, the knowledge of Hashem, the reality of what Chassidus tells us all the time, that Hashem is present in the world, that Hashem is there, Hashem creates everything. So all of that will be revealed, visible, and experienced by everybody. The pasuk says even further, the pasuk says, V'ro kol basar. In other words, this is a physical thing. We don't just mean a conceptual understanding. We mean we'll be able to see it and appreciate it the same way we see physical things. The pasuk says, "V'ro kol basar." The flesh will be able to see it. So from this we understand that when we speak about the Chachmas HaOlam serving as the preparation for Mashiach, we mean specifically in something which helps us in a similar. It helps us in a similar way to something which is V'ro kol basar, for us to be able to physically see something. What exactly does that mean? What exactly does that mean? So the Rebbe gives an example. And this is going to be the first level, the first explanation of how the development of Chachmas HaOlam serve as the preparation for the times of Mashiach. So the Rebbe gives an example like this. One of the technologies that have been recently developed is the ability to listen to somebody who's speaking in one geographical location in the world, and to be able to hear the person simultaneously in a very distant place, either with a telephone or with the radio. And today we can expand this to internet, etc., other methods of technology. But we have the ability to listen to somebody across the world and hear instantaneously as they speak. We can hear their voice with every nuance and tone, etc. The same thing is true not only being able to hear somebody, the same thing is true that the technology evolved to allow us to see them as well. So we could see somebody with every one of their movements and motions as they speak. We're able to see every single thing that they do. How does this affect us? Because as a Yid, we know that one of the things that it says in Pirkei Avos tells us that there's always Ayid Roya, there's an eye that watches everything, Hashem sees everything we do, and Oizen Shemas, Hashem hears everything that we do, and everything gets written down immediately. Once we have technology that allows us physically to be able to hear and see somebody across the world, this makes it much closer for us to be able to understand and appreciate that when the Pirkei Avos says that Hashem is able to hear and see everything that a Yid does, a person does, immediately, it's a real thing. We see it and appreciate it ourselves. So here we have an example of something that modern technology developed, and modern technology allows us to be able to appreciate in a physical sense something that until now we had to maybe believe it, be able to understand it. All of a sudden we have a physical appreciation of something that allows us to appreciate the reality that Hashem is always watching us, and Hashem is aware of every single thing that a Yid does. Obviously, that inspires a Yid to do what he has to do. If a person knows that somebody's watching him, right? When we know that somebody's watching every motion that we make, so our responsibility, our sense of urgency will be heightened, and therefore the Yid, his machshava dibra ma'isa, his work, his thought, speech, and action will be obviously on guard, knowing that somebody's watching him. So this is the first explanation, the first level of understanding how development, an example of something in modern technology that helps us understand something in our relationship with Hashem, and ultimately to help us be better Yidden in the things that we have to do. This is level number one. But the Rebbe doesn't stop here. And the reason why the Rebbe doesn't stop here is because in Divrei Chazal, in the words of Chazal, we find that there's two categories of things that Chazal speak about and their relationship with Bishvil Torah and Bishvil Yisroel. On the one hand, we have many things, everything. The Torah says that the whole world was created Bishvil Torah, Bishvil Yisroel, for the Yidden and for the Torah. So everything really is included in this general category of Bishvil Torah, Bishvil Yisroel, for the Yidden and for the Torah. But nevertheless, there are certain things that are singled out. Certain things are singled out, and that we highlight in those things that those things are different than everything else. These things, more than regular Bria Soila, more than regular creation, these things are singled out, and we say that these things, we emphasize that they were only created for a holy purpose. An example for this would be gold. There's a famous medrash that says that the world wasn't fit to be able to use gold, and the only reason why gold was created was for the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash. Now here, the Medrash is telling us much more. The Medrash is not just saying that when we have gold, we have to use it out for a good thing. In essence, what the Medrash is saying is that really gold doesn't belong in this world. And therefore, it's not that gold exists, and we can also use it for Hashem. The Medrash is saying much more than that. The Medrash is saying is that the world really doesn't deserve gold. Gold really doesn't belong here. Gold is only here for Avodas Hashem. Now, if that's the case, why could a person use gold for other things also? Why can't we have jewelry made out of gold, etc.? The answer is because we have Bechira Chavshis, we have to have free choice. So there has to be an opportunity to use gold for whatever we want, not only for the Mishkan. But in concept, when Hashem created gold, what's the purpose and what's the lone purpose of what the gold is for? Only to be used in the Mishkan, only to be used in the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Because again, here the Medrash singles out gold and says a language more than the Medrash says about the rest of the world. So now let's apply this same concept when it comes to Chachmas Ha'olam. The Medrash doesn't say that everything in the world serves as a preparation for Mashiach. The Medrash singles out Torah, obviously, the gates of the Torah will be revealed, which is Chassidus. But the Medrash here points out Chachmas Ha'olam. And by pointing out Chachmas Ha'olam, what's the Medrash saying? The Medrash is saying is, not only that there's technology out there, and there's something in technology that we can use to learn out a lesson in Avodas Hashem. The Medrash really is saying much more than that. The Medrash is really saying that the Chachmas Ha'olam itself needs to be used to prepare for Mashiach. Where do we see that? Where do we see the Chachmas Ha'olam themselves being used in preparation for Mashiach. So here the Rebbe takes it up a notch. He gives us another explanation, an even higher level, to be able to understand this. And that is that when we speak about the Chiddush, which is going to happen when Mashiach comes, again, the novelty of being able to experience godliness in a physical way, so really there's two pieces. Number one, the fact that it's going to be everywhere. Mala haaretz es Hashem, Mala haaretz deos Hashem, kamayim liyam mechasim. Hashem's knowledge is going to be everywhere. The world will be filled with it, like the pasuk says. Kamayim liyam mechasim, like the water covers the sea. But also it's going to be something which is going to be present in a physical way. As the pasuk we quoted earlier, v'ro kabasar, something that we're going to be able to appreciate in a physical way. So the Rebbe says, we find in the developments of technology, we find that the developments of technology allow for a yid to be able to learn Torah in taking advantage of these two things. Where is that? When a person studies Torah using technology, for example, a radio, so the Rebbe says that somebody takes a radio to spread Primis HaTorah, to teach Chassidus, for example. So now, what's happening with the Torah study that the Yid is doing is two things. Number one, again, like we said earlier, you could listen to it anywhere, wherever a person might be. But also, it's something that you're able to appreciate in a physical way. It's not a dream. We're not talking about some concept out there. We're physically able to hear the voice of the person doing the speaking in our ears, and it's that. And it sounds exactly like that person is, right? So in other words, we hear the original voice of that person, the original sound of what that person sounds like. We hear as if we were sitting in front of him. So we have on the one hand an element, a me'in, a taste of Mala haaretz es Hashem, that the world is filled with that study of Chassidus at that moment. And we also have the v'ro kabasar, we have it in a physical way, that we're able to hear it physically. Rabbi adds in the parentheses over here, that Rabbi adds in a side piece over here, that radio waves work in such a way that radio waves are present everywhere, and you have to have a receiver in order to be able to translate those radio waves into a physical sound. But even in a place where the radio isn't there, in other words, the keli, in a place where the radio isn't present, to be able to translate the waves into a physical sound, the wave is still there. The wave is everywhere in the world. So potentially, even in a place where we're not actually listening to the shir, to the study of Chassidus, or whichever location we are, we still have, the waves are still there, and the waves are the ones that are really spreading the Chassidus everywhere. So here the Rebbe says, here we have even a higher level of utilizing technology for study of Chassidus. Because now, not only do we have technology on the side, and we're learning a lesson from the technology. No, over here it's much more than that. Over here, we're taking the technology, and we're using the technology itself, contributes to the learning Torah. The technology itself is being used to allow for the Torah to be learned everywhere, again, to spread the Torah, to the Mala haaretz es Hashem, Mala haaretz deos Hashem, to spread it everywhere. And v'ro kabasar, we should also be able to physically be able to hear it or see it, again, whichever technology we're using, wherever the person is. This is the second level. But again, even the second level, the Rebbe says, is also still not all the way there. Why? Because even the second level, the technology is one thing. The chachma, the wisdom, is one thing. The technology is created. We're taking the technology that the wisdom created in order to be able to spread Chassidus. But the wisdom itself is not spreading Chassidus. The developed technology, we're utilizing the developed technology to spread Chassidus. But the original chachma, the wisdom of the technology, is not necessarily related to Limud Torah. So here what the Rebbe is going to do is the Rebbe is going to take it up to a third level and explain to us in an even deeper way how Chachmas Ha'olam, how the knowledge of the world brings to a greater understanding, and again in the words that the Rebbe uses here, a hachana, to understanding the ideas of Chassidus. And the Rebbe goes on to explain as follows. One of the emphasis of Primis HaTorah of Chassidus is to explain and to bring out the achdus of Hashem, the unity of Hashem in this world. In other words, that in spite of there being many creations in this world, at the end of the day, there's one Hashem, there's one God, which is behind everything, and Hashem, in His great unity, is everything and encompasses everything in this world. Now the world itself doesn't. The way we look at the world, we don't see this. We don't experience this in a regular way when we look at the world. But nevertheless, as science makes its own advances, the Chachmas Ha'olam, the science, the knowledge of Chachmas Ha'olam, brings us closer to this understanding of Hashem, of the entire world being achdus, of the entire world being made up of one core essence of Hashem. Where is that? So the Rebbe explains that science used to think that every one of the physical, natural powers of the world is sort of on its own trajectory and operates in its own matter. And the matter of every creation in this world is made up of numerous other particles and elements that make up each one of the matters. And according to this understanding, the world is very, very, very finite, but at the same time very disparate. There's a lot of pratim, a lot of details that make up collectively creation. But as Chachmas Olam becomes more developed, Chachmas Olam itself, science itself, comes closer to the understanding that the disparate details that we see in creation is nothing but external, and it's only in how the parts come together, etc. But at their core, in essence, what it is at their core, really, every single thing in this world is made up of chomer and surah, kamos and echos, which means that every single thing in this world is made up of the same matter, and there's the matter and the energy that come together to create every single thing in this world. And so it's just a question of how much matter and how much energy, but ultimately it's all a question of matter and energy coming together, creating a reality of Olam Hazeh the way we see it. So the fewer pieces that we have in creation, the closer we get to an understanding of Achdos, an understanding of the world really being a reality of oneness, of Hashem's Achdos, of Hashem's oneness. So this is an example, the Rebbe says. I believe the Rebbe here is referring to quantum physics as we know it today. Please don't ask me what that is or to explain it beyond my pay grade, but I'm happy to share what it says in the Sikha. So once we understand that this is what the sciences of the world contribute and prepare for Mashiach from this perspective, so it's not only that science exists and we're learning a lesson from science, it's not only that science exists and we're taking advantage of one of the technologies that science developed. No, it's much more than that. We're taking the knowledge of science itself, and the knowledge of science itself contributes to our understanding of there being Achdus, of there being only one God, and that's the singular energy of everything in this world. Ultimately, this is the connection of what the Zohar means when the Zohar says that the revelation of Pnimis HaTorah and the revelation of Chachmas Ha'olam, the development of sciences together, prepare the world for the 7th millennium, for the coming of Mashiach. Why? Because the revelation of Pnimis HaTorah and its effect on Chachmas Ha'olam, in other words, the fact that the revelation of Pnimis HaTorah in the 6th century coincides and brings with it the development in the sciences that we've seen, that brings out a greater level in Torah Shel Mashiach, in a taste of what Mashiach is going to bring. Why? Because we're bringing out that even the world itself, which up until this point we don't view as one with Hashem, the world itself and the logic of the world, the sciences of the world, also contribute, and they become a kedi, they contribute to the understanding of Achdus Hashem, which means that the world itself and the sciences of the world themselves also point to the same reality of Achdus Hashem that Chassidus points to. What this tells us is that it's not just that Chassidus is telling us something from the books, it's that the world itself, from the world's own perspective and the world's own method of understanding and development, also are pointing in that same direction, the same Achdus Hashem that we see in this world. And what's that Achdus? That Achdus ultimately is Achdus Hashem. That's the oneness of Hashem, the oneness of Hashem being everything. So ultimately, this is something that we're going to experience when Mashiach comes in the 7th millennium, B'Karev Mamash. I want to go back for a moment to that piece that I said earlier that I skipped about the Rebbe's perspective on college, and specifically the way the Rebbe explains it in this particular Sikha. It's something that the Rebbe spoke numerous times, but the way it was published in the Sikha, the Rebbe says as follows. Earlier on, the Rebbe mentioned that in the Sikha, the Rebbe mentioned that Chachmas Ha'olam were created for B'shvil HaTorah, B'shvil Yisroel. So one can ask, if that's the case, so just like a person has anything in this world, a person has a worldly possession, and we can use it out for a good thing, so the same thing is true with going to college. College is also a place where a person learns Chachmas Ha'olam, and Chachmas Ha'olam was created B'shvil HaTorah, B'shvil Yisroel, like anything else in this world. So why is college any different? So the Rebbe says it's obvious that this whole conversation has got nothing to do with college. Why? Because the college campus is a very different place. Why is it a different place? Because if a college campus was only a matter of studying Chachmas Ha'olam, okay, then you can argue it. The Rebbe says a college campus has got much more than just studying Chachmas Ha'olam, and the Rebbe enumerates a few things, a few areas where a college campus is dangerous for somebody today. Number one, the Rebbe says a college campus is a place which is saturated with kfira and hashgacha pratis. In other words, to believe a college campus, especially I'm assuming the Rebbe refers here to the methodology of the sciences in college campuses, is something which rejects the ability of Hashem to control the world. In other words, that there are forces of power, and that's the way the world operates. And for somebody to think that Hashem is involved in hashgacha pratis in a way that Hashem is operating this world is contrary to what is taught on science campuses. Number two, the Rebbe says there's issues of avodah zarah and faiths that are not compatible with Torah that are being taught in science campuses. The third thing the Rebbe mentions is that tznius is something which doesn't exist in a college campus. It's a wild place, and anybody who even considers operating in a way which is in tune with the Torah's perspective on tznius is laughed at. In a college campus, it's the opposite. The more pritzus somebody has, the less tznius somebody has, the greater campus it is. Right? We know this in America. We have campuses that pride themselves on being party campuses, and it's a matter of pride. So to say that that's a place that is conducive for somebody to be a firm person and to live in accordance with the way the Torah wants, the Rebbe says this is something which is impossible to imagine, and for somebody to argue and say that a person can be in such a place and remain a firm Yid, the Rebbe says, is difficult to accept. Even if somebody will insist that they're better than everybody else, and for them these things aren't going to have an effect. We have a famous piece of davening that we say, Al Tivienu Lidei Nisayon. We ask Hashem not to bring us to a test. Al Tivienu Lidei Nisayon. And this is something which everybody has to say, even a Tzaddik Gomer, 119 years old, 353 days, has to say this also, because every single person has to resist ever being put in a place of Nisayon. So how much more so somebody who's not a Tzaddik Gomer, somebody who's not 120 years old, somebody who's just living a young, impressionable person, how much more so Al Tavienu Lidei Nisayon, the reality of not putting ourselves in harm's way and not forcing ourselves to choose between what the Torah wants of us and the spirit in a place like a college campus. Obviously one has to avoid putting themselves in such a situation and thus avoiding going to such a place. So I just wanted to share that at the end, sort of to give it its own space. Yeshua Koyach, everybody.